Hello and welcome to the Happy Families podcast. A couple of months ago on parental guidance, you heard this.
Are you a robot?
No, I am a human who absolutely loves donuts. I am just obsessed with them, but I am 100% human.
Wow.
AI chatbots replacing real friends. Is it possible? Today on the podcast, we discuss that with an expert who runs a Substack, one of the best tech Substacks in the world, Jacqueline Nesi. Jackie Nesi is from Brown University, asking the question, are AI companions replacing real friends? Because we know that Aussie kids are into them. Plus, a brand new study that Jackie's done, the surprising truth about smartphone checking and mood. How often do your kids pick up their phones? And what does it do to their emotions and their ability to be in the moment? There's stuff for you. There's stuff for them. Stay with us. Hello and welcome to the Happy Families podcast, real parenting solutions every day on Australia's most downloaded parenting podcast. My name's Dr Justin Coulson. Today I'm joined by Jacqueline Nesi. Jackie's a clinical psychologist and assistant professor at Brown University and author of the popular weekly Substack, Techno Sapiens. I discovered it a couple of months ago and I literally never miss an episode, an edition. I never miss the newsletter. I love it. An email, whatever it is. Substack, I've recently discovered it. I'm into it. Techno Sapiens is the name of the Substack. Jackie's research focuses on the role of technology in kids' mental health, especially teens, and on how parents can help. She's the co-founder of Tech Without Stress, which provides online resources and courses for parents raising kids in the digital age, put together with a Harvard researcher as well. We are talking about big guns, and we'll talk about all of that and more today. Jackie, thank you for staying up late to chat with me on the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
So let's start off with AI bots. You referred in Techno Sapiens a couple of months ago to a new article from Common Sense Media looking at what's going on with kids, friends, and these brand new AI companions. What did you discover and why does this matter for parents?
Yeah, so this is really, I think, kind of the new frontier for parents when we think about technology and the ways that it's impacting our kids. I think we know that generative AI is becoming more and more commonplace, more ubiquitous. Kids and teens in particular are certainly using it. And this study from Common Sense Media in particular was looking at AI companions. So basically the use of AI for more emotional support, friendship, more sort of companionship. And one of the most striking findings to me was just how frequently kids are using these, just how sort of out there they are. So 72% they found of teens say that they've ever used an AI companion, which is much higher than I would have anticipated. And almost half, or a little more than half of teens are regular users. So they're using these things, at least a few times a month.
This really surprised me as well. When we did this on parental guidance, a couple of the kids were just like, meh, this is kind of dumb, not into this. If I'm going to talk to somebody, I want to talk to somebody real. But a couple of the kids were really hooked. They were really, really dragged in. I know that a lot of adults are using things like ChatGPT as a companion, like as a conversation, almost as a therapist. But Character.ai and the other one that I can think of is Replica. Yeah. They seem to be insidious. Like once the kids start talking with them, the kids don't want to let go, but the AI companion doesn't seem to want to let go either.
Okay, it's probably for the best. I don't need you being my best friend anyway. See ya, bro. You're a jerk.
Okay, here's something concerning. He wants to go and the chatbot is trying to keep him engaged. That's very typical. Of course, they want users to stay online as long as possible.
Yeah, I think this is tricky because I think right now we're in a phase where these technologies are being designed, and in many cases they're being designed for adults, right? They're not being designed specifically for kids or for teens. And so I think we do run a little bit of the risk of, are these going to be safe for kids? One thing that I worry about is what you're talking about, which is that some of the platforms are designed to increase engagement. So they're designed to keep the conversation going, as long as possible. And what that means is that sometimes you get into situations where maybe the chatbot is saying things to keep kids engaged, to keep them using using them for longer. And that's not always going to be the best thing for a given kid, depending on the situation.
I was talking to a parent just recently about this. Her son is having a really hard time socially, has some neurodevelopmental challenges. And this mum said when he talks with the AI companion, he feels like he has a friend. Do you think that teens are replacing real life friends with AI companions? Is this something that is potentially going to, I mean, the numbers are staggering. 3/4 of kids have tried and half are using them with some regularity. Do you think that this is actually going to become a thing? And what would you say to a mum who says, at least my son now has someone to talk to?
Mm-hmm. I think it's important with this, just like it is with any other technology, like social media or smartphones or whatever it might be, to not paint with too broad of a brush, because I do think that there are certainly kids using these tools in certain ways where they can have real benefits. I think it is the case that there may be some kids who are struggling in certain ways in their offline lives, or who have, other things going on, where then it is helpful for them just to have another thing out there to get advice, even to ask about, sort of social skills, to learn new things. Like, I certainly think that there can be benefits for some kids. So I personally don't think, and I don't think the research right now would support the idea that this is all bad and that we should be, and that it's bad for all kids at all times.
Mm-hmm.
I do think that with the current platforms, like I was saying, I think that we need more safeguards in place. I think that these things are being designed for adults, and we really need, if we want kids to be able to take advantage of the benefits of the platforms, they really need to be designed for kids. And that means having some safeguards, having some safety features in place.
Yeah, I have an unanticipated question that's just popped into my head around this kind of technology and social media more generally. I mean, this is your area of absolute depth and expertise. The Australian government is introducing minimum age legislation at the end of the year. Under 16s won't be able to access social media platforms without verifying their age. They need, if you're under 16, you can't verify your age because you're under 16. You've got to be over 16 to use the platforms. News just recently was that YouTube would also be included in that legislation. What do you think about this idea generally? Is this a good thing or a bad thing that the government is stepping in and saying the tech companies can't be trusted with your children, and we're going to therefore introduce legislation to keep your kids safe from these nefarious, mendacious, bad actors?
Yeah, I see both, I see both sides of this here, where I think on the one hand, I do think that there's always going to be some kind of age cutoff for these types of tools, right? So, in the US, at least right now, it's effectively 13. Of course, you can get on younger than that. But, generally, most places, they're setting an age limit and saying, hey, here's the age that we think it's appropriate for kids to be on these platforms. And so you can debate what is the best age for that. Some would say younger, 13 is better. Some would say older, 16 is better. So that's one side of it, that, you need to set it somewhere. And so why not set it at 16? The biggest challenge that I see with it is that the implementation, I imagine, will be very difficult. And I could see a situation where you still get a lot of kids under the age of 16 who are getting onto these platforms. And then there's really no incentive for the companies to then make the products better and safer for kids, because they can just say, well, there's none of them on there. They're not supposed to be on there. And so I think that, ideally, I think you'd have kind of a two-pronged solution where you have a minimum age, whatever you decide that should be, but you also are taking steps to improve the platforms themselves so that younger users are having a better experience on there.
Okay, thank you for that. So many things we could talk about. Up next, though, we have to have a chat about this study that you've just done recently, looking at the surprising truth about how often you check your smartphone and what it does to your mood. Today on the Happy Families podcast, speaking with Professor Jacqueline Nesi from Brown University, mum of 2 young kids and the author of a brand new study looking at the surprising and revealing truth about how often we check our smartphones and what it says about our moods. Well, at least for teenagers. Jackie, talk us through this study that you did and what we as parents need to know about our kids and their smartphones.
So this study was one that I did in collaboration with Dr. Caitlin Burnell, who is at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. And we did the study with a team there at UNC. And what we were interested in is whether the amount of times that teens picked up their phones throughout the day had an impact on their mood. And so actually anyone can check the number of times that they have picked up their phones in a given day. If you have an iPhone, for example, you can go to your screen time app. If you have an Android, you can go to what's called digital wellbeing, and it gives you a number of how many times did you pick up your phone.
I've just checked. I've just checked.
Okay.
I don't know.
Where are you at?
I don't know if I want to confess this or not.
Okay.
You would know what the norms are. What would a typical 50-year-old man have for his daily pickups? Can I get an average just before I reveal?
Oh, you know what? I don't know for the typical 50-year-old man. I can give you for teens, but
what would the average teen be?
Yeah, so in our study, we found the average was 112 times per day.
Wow. Okay, so hang on. I want to do some quick maths before I reveal how many times I'm looking at my phone per day, picking it up. So 112 times a day. How many hours would you say the average teenager is awake per day? Is that like, should we say 14 hours, 15 hours? Would that be about right?
Yeah.
Okay, so If it's 15 hours, that's 7.5 pickups an hour. So that's one pickup less than every 10 minutes. That's on average, right? So the average kid, once every 10 minutes, they're picking up the phone and looking at it. That must be terrible for productivity and terrible for getting into flow.
Yeah, I mean, I think that we know that most people are picking up their phones a lot throughout the day, and that we don't know in this study, we don't know exactly when those pickups were happening, if it was concentrated at certain times of day, but certainly you would think also that if the pickups are happening in the middle of the night or during the school day or during times when we would hope that other things are happening like sleep or engagement in the classroom, you would think that would have a negative impact on productivity and focus.
Okay, so how many times do you pick it up each day, Jackie? Just I got to know.
Oh, let's see. My number was, when I looked at this, 90 something.
Wow. Okay, so I'm feeling better about life. I'm at 44. 44.
Oh, that's not bad.
I'll take that. Okay, so what did we learn about these children and their pickups and their mood?
Yeah, so there were two main takeaways from the study. So one was that teens who were checking their smartphones, more frequently on average, they're picking them up overall more than their peers. We're also showing more like ups and downs in negative emotions, like sadness and anger. So kind of more variability in their negative emotions. We don't know in this case what's causing what. So it could be that kids who are already sort of having more mood swings are more likely to be checking their phones, maybe as a way to regulate.
Yeah.
Or it could be the opposite, that the checking of the phones is actually causing a bit more up and down in their moods. So that was one key finding. And then the other takeaway was that, looking sort of day to day, was that when teens had a particularly, bad day, so like lower positive feelings than usual on a given day, they actually picked up their phones more the next day. But interestingly, that was only for kids who had lower levels of mindfulness. And so what we think might be happening there is that this is sort of about kind of emotion regulation. So maybe kids who are less kind of mindful overall, less present, are maybe having more trouble regulating their emotions. And so then when they have a bad day, maybe they're turning to their phones to help them feel better. So they're picking up their phones more often as a way to feel better. It could be good or bad. Right? It could be bad if there's more effective ways they could be coping. It could be good if they're reaching out for support, if they're talking to family and friends, texting and that kind of thing.
So that prompts the question, when they do pick up their phones, do you know what they're doing on them? Like, where are they going with the pickup?
Yeah. So, we have a general sense of, we don't know for every single pickup, but interestingly, in our sample, 50% of the pickups overall, across all participants, were for Snapchat. So that's definitely the most common thing that they are doing, is getting onto Snapchat. And again, that could be good if they're basically using it text to text and reaching out to friends. it could be bad if it's something that's, where they're scrolling or it's generally sort of not effective for them in terms of coping. The next most popular, much farther behind that, was Instagram, which was 13% of the pickups. Messages was 12%.
Wow.
So,
and TikTok was not there? Or?
TikTok was 7%.
Wow.
So this was, so the study was done in 2020. And so that's when the data was collected. And so TikTok at the time was popular, but not quite where it is now.
Yeah.
So I imagine if we did it now, we might see some differences there.
Okay. So the take-home message really is kids may be using their phone as an emotion regulation tool, and that could be good or bad depending on what they're doing as they use the device. They're on their phones a fair bit. We already know that. Where to from here? What do we really need to understand at this point?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's very true in terms of the takeaway. And I think the other major takeaway is just that the effects of smartphones on mood and on well-being are actually kind of complicated. I think a lot of times we think that this is this very simple, smartphones are bad. Like that's sort of the message that we get and how we come into this thinking. But really, it depends a lot on kind of what kids are doing on their smartphones when they're on there. It depends on who they are, right? Like individual kids are having different experiences on their smartphones depending on a number of factors. In our study, we were looking at their levels of mindfulness, but it could be a number of different things. And so the effects really depend on who it is and how they're using it.
Jackie Nesi, a clinical psychologist and professor at Brown University. Check out the Substack Techno Sapiens. I'll link to that in the show notes. And a course to help you with your children and their screen time, Tech Without Stress. Again, I'll link to that in the show notes. This is definitely worth taking a look at. Jackie is somebody who I think is incredibly knowledgeable in these areas, and you will get so much from it. Jackie, thanks so much for spending some time with us, chatting about your studies and what our kids are doing online. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me.
The Happy Families podcast is produced by Justin Coulson from Bridge Media. More information and more resources from happyfamilies.com.au.